Welcome to a new How to Create Among Us episode. If you are new to the channel, I suggest you start with the playlist, which should appear right now, that covers all the tutorials that we did up until this point. I'm Adrian and welcome to Redefine Gamedev. In this episode, you'll find out how to create a lobby/room functionality in Photon networking. Before starting the tutorial, I have an important announcement to make. I have decided to release the project that we've been seeing through all of these tutorials as a game kit. Of course, it will be a pre-release, it will be, let's say, an early access version. So this is why it's 50% off. If you decide to buy this project, what exactly are you gonna get? For starters, you're gonna get the full project up until this point from every tutorial. By the way, this is a really nice way to track the progress of the project. The other stuff that you'll get are all the assets that I'm using and also some exclusive bonus features like some videos which are explaining in much detail how to create password protected rooms or private rooms, or fully documented code that will help you to understand properly what we are trying to achieve. So if you head over to the webpage that I've created for the project, you'll find out a list of the current features and also a list of the planned features which you will be able to get in the future versions. So you might be asking, what's the price? Well, the full price is $7.99, but initially, while the project is early access, you'll get it for $3.99. Yes, that's right, for 50% off. Now, what about free options? Are there any ways that you can get the project for free? Well, actually you're in luck. There are two ways. The first one, which is pretty obvious, you just do the tutorials which are free on Redefine's channel. The second one, which is the most interesting one, is that actually you can get your hands on a copy of the project without paying anything. Starting with this video, I'll hide 3 unlock codes in each video that if you get them and if you use them to unlock the project, you'll get it for free. What you have to do is be aware when they're released and be the first one to get the code. Good luck! Also, if you run into issues with the project, you can join our Discord server and you can ask more questions there. Okay, now let's get back to the tutorial. Before going into the tutorial, me and other people doing the tutorial have experienced problems with code autocompletion for Photon.PUN not working. This part addresses that issue. First, go to the package manager and make sure you have imported PUN2 free into your project. Also upgrade it if that's the case. Next, check the assets in the project and make sure Visual Studio Code and editor are updated to the latest version. Also, in the project preferences, make sure you have the external script editor in Visual Studio community, which you should be also updating. We will start by creating the scene called Lobby. Since most of the interaction happens in the UI, we will also create a canvas. For the needed networked scripts, I tidied up the project a little by creating a folder and placing them conveniently there. The first script, and the most important one, is the Lobby Network Manager. Let's make sure we have set up the correct usings. Since the script interacts with Photon, we need to extend it from monobehavior PUN callbacks. Later in this series, this will be the first point of entry, so here we will have to connect to the server. I'll fast forward through this because we previously discussed how to connect to the Photon server. One thing to note here, enable the automatically sync scene by setting it to true. It won't be used in this tutorial, but it will be needed later on. Photon works by calling callbacks to this class. Unconnected to master means that we established a connection with the main server, while undisconnected is being called when we lost or shut down that connection. What is the most important one is that we will join the lobby after we connect to the server, and then we will get the event when this action was successful in onJoined lobby. Let's create a new empty game object and attach the lobby manager script to it so we can test the connection. Right now, we are outputting to the console, but seems that we have established a connection and we are in the lobby. We will now make the functionality that allows the players to create custom rooms. I'll fast forward through this because it's the UI creation process. Back to the lobby network manager, we need to have a reference to the room name input. Also, Photon provides an override on join room. Here we will output if the action was successful. Create room function will be called by the UI button in the scene. It will call create room from Photon with the room name from the field. In the scene, we need to assign the components to the required fields. Don't forget also to set the Create Room button to the correct function. If we test it, now we can see that the player successfully joined the newly created room. One more thing, it would be good to check if the room name is empty. This will prevent creating rooms with no name. What if you are not the first one to join the lobby? We need a way to display all the other existing rooms. For this, we will create a new UI image, which I'll also fast forward through. What is the most important part here is that there will be multiple rooms in the list. We will make use of the vertical layout group to set up everything properly, so that when we add new elements to the list, for them to be displayed one after another. The elements are called room list item that has a text and a button, join. We will create a prefab out of this since we will be instantiating it at the runtime. Simply drag and drop it to the project view in order to prefab it. We need some control to be able to change the name and the button functionality. For this, we will create room item UI script. Here, we will need the reference to the text label, which will be in the room's name. We also need a callback to hook the join button to it. Since this room item UI will call create room in the lobby network manager, we will also need to have reference to that script so that when we press the join button to actually join that room. Note that this function doesn't exist just yet. Going to the Lobby Network Manager, we need to create the join room, which will be triggered by each join button with the specific room name. To actually join the room, Photon provides an easy way to do it. Don't forget to remove the room item from hierarchy. It will be created only automatically. To display the room list, we will break down the operation in two steps. Firstly, we will override the Photon callback on the room list update, which will be called when a room was created, deleted, or renamed. The second step is to implement our own update room list function, which will instantiate the room item elements in the list. We will tidy up the code a little because it seems to be getting cluttered. Luckily, C# offers us regions, which we can use to group specific parts of the code and hide them. We will create one for the Photon callbacks. Let's continue with the update room list. Here we will need two things. First, we will clear the current list, and secondly, we will generate a new list of rooms. To destroy a Unity game object, you need to specify the actual game object and call destroy function. Also, it's a good thing to clear the list itself. We will also need a reference to the room UI prefab. This will be instantiated with each new room found. For the room creation, we need to take all the elements in the room list and instantiate a new item for each. One important step here is to correctly parent the room element to the game object that has the vertical component. We also need a reference for that. Lastly, we need to add the newly created room element to the room list. Getting back to the scene, we need to set up the network lobby with some new references. If you cannot drag and drop the room item prefab, it's because it needs the room item UI script, which I also forgot to add. Don't forget that this script also needs a reference to the text field and the button needs to call onJoinPressed from it. Now we can finish the references and start testing. I connected another client and created the room. As the second client, we can see the room was created, just the name did not change correctly. That is because we need to assign the room name to each element. Let's test this now and see the result. It works. Also, join room works as well. Double awesome! Let's head to the last part of this tutorial. What happens once you are in the room? You should be able to see other players that have joined, right? Visually, it's mostly the same functionality. This is why we are going to reuse a lot of the things built for the room. Only the room item will be duplicated, renamed to the player item, because we need to remove the join button. The script can remain the same since it has set text, which we will actually use to change the player's name. It would also be a good idea to know what is the current status if you are in a room or not, and to be able to leave a room. Getting back to the lobby network manager, this is where we will put the code as well. And we will start with the leave room since the button is left without a proper function to call. Photon offers this functionality out of the box. We will need a reference for the status field as well as for the leave room button. Let's rig up everything in the scene before moving on. Also, hint here, it's good to name the UI elements that you create. It will be confusing otherwise. Photon offers two more convenient callbacks, onJoinRoom and onLeftRoom. We will use this to disable the button and change the status field as well. Let's test the leave room functionality. Seems to be working fine. When we start the game, we need the leave button to be disabled. We'll create and initialize a function and call it in start. For the button, instead of hiding it, we can properly disable it. This requires the reference type to be changed from GameObject to button. Also, in both the join room and left room, we need to make the button interactable or not. Testing now, it seems that the button gets disabled properly. To create the player list, we will use two more Photon callbacks when a player enters a room or leaves. These events will update the player list on demand. The update player list function is very similar to the update room list. The difference is how we parse the player list. Of course, these variables are very similar to the room ones. We need to make them because we want to have the player list instantiate the new player names and have a prefab to do so. The player list is received from Photon, current room, players, and it's in the form of a key value pair. The instantiation is pretty much straightforward, as the room ones. Heading back to the scene, we need to assign all the references properly. Also, if the player joins or leaves the room, we need to update the player list. To avoid an exception, in the update player list we need to check if we are in the room or not. Let's test it now and see if the list gets updated properly. And this is how you get the lobby system in place. Cool, right? If you're looking for more tutorials about how to make Among Us, here's the place. So don't forget to subscribe. Also, this channel is not only about Among Us, but more in game development, especially how to get success in game development. This is what we are focused here. I'm Adrian and I'm signing out.